This will provide you with something that you can use professionally and maybe be a refresher if this is something you're familiar with. And then hopefully from a personal perspective, it'll be thought-provoking as well. So I have about 10 slides I'm going to go through, just some informational things, and then we're going to do a little exercise for a few minutes. We're going to wrap up with some discussion and Q&A. And with that, I love this little slide background. I just have to share that, this sort of I wonder night sky. So along with the theme of questioning, so really asking why comes naturally. I'm not sure if, I know some of you have kids, I'm not sure how many of you, but if you have had a child or if you've been around children, this is very familiar to you, like why? So that's really what we're about today, is just really questioning why. And as humans, we are naturally inquisitive. So this is just a little cartoon to take a look at, the question that if we are parents, we've all heard, Mommy, why is the sky blue? And here's a very scientific mom who says, Rayleigh scattering, short wavelengths get scattered way more, proportional to some mathematical symbol there. Blue light dominates because it's so short. And the lovely little girl says, so why isn't the sky violet? And the mom is now stumped. Well, I'm not sure. So I think, again, if you've had kids, you might have had that sort of experience. But this is a nice illustration that one question, even if it's really well answered and thoughtful, can lead to another question that then we're not so sure about the answer to. And with that, to just kind of lead us off, I'm going to share a little bit about the 5 whys process, which is actually, some of you again may have heard of this or used it in the past. The 5 whys is actually a problem-solving methodology initially developed and implemented by Toyota in the 1930s, actually, and many of us have probably heard of Toyota as one of the kind of masters of continuous improvement and process control. So this process really started out as a business process for root cause analysis. And the premise was that repeating why like 5 times, keep digging, that if we did that, we would really illuminate in business the nature of the real problem and also the relationship of the different causes, and that would inform a stronger solution. And just from a personal story, I worked in the pharmaceutical industry for about 8 years, quite some years ago with Eli Lilly and Company. I used this process many times in trying to determine like why a process wasn't going well. And we would trace it back to, is it a human error? Was it a temperature error? We found an error in a standard operating procedure. So this was something that was very familiar to me that I learned really in a business setting. I have taken this sort of with me throughout my career and used this process in an educational session as a industry, as a school principal. I use this kind of process with our school teams to determine things like, why was a certain population not doing as well on a standardized test as another population? So this problem-solving method has been really sort of co-opted by a lot of industries, including health and wellness. So just a question or a raised hand. How many of you have already heard of the 5 whys before? Karen, I see you nodding. Red, I see maybe a few nods, or at least you know something about that. Certainly we all know about the why, the questioning process. So that's just a little history on the 5 whys, really where it came from. And now really the 5 whys in the health and wellness in our field, evoking the why. So really this comes from the motivational interviewing. I pulled that word evoking from our motivational interviewing techniques. And because we know as health and wellness coaches that uncovering the client's reason for change really creates energy for the client and can be the catalyst for true change. So why is the sky blue? How do you figure out if the sky is blue if you don't know? How do you get to that why? So really with that question, if you're asked that question by a child and you don't know, It takes some digging, right? You've got to go in and find the research, unless you're a scientist or happen to remember that from your high school science classes, which I know I don't. That would take me a little bit of digging to find out the real why around why the sky is blue. And it's really the same with us as humans. We have to do a little digging to really get down to the true why. And so that's what we're going to take a look at, kind of what does that look like then? What does that 5 why process sound like? I'm going to go through a few examples with you, and then we're going to try it ourselves. So here's one example. It might sound something like, my problem is I submitted my grant report late. So Cindy, why did you submit your grant report late? Well, I was too busy. And by the way, this does happen to me. I was too busy with meetings during the workday. I didn't have time to get it done. Well, Cindy, what's going on with your workday that you're so busy with meetings or so busy during the workday? Well, I spend 6 to 7 hours a day in meetings. I don't have sufficient time to do other work. Well, why is that? Why are you in all these meetings? I have multiple projects and deadlines happening at the same time. Well, why does that happen? Well, I've taken on too many projects. I'm not talked to my boss about the need to balance my workload. So Cindy, why haven't you talked to your boss? Well, I'm worried if I tell my boss I have too much on my plate, she'll take away some of the projects I like best. Okay, there's a message there, right? That we didn't get way up in the front. So then let's go back to this. What if? What if as we were coaching this person that came to us, what if we stopped at number 2? That the client says, well, I was just too busy with meetings, didn't have time to get this grant report done. What if we stopped here? Might we just develop a plan with that client to reorganize her day? And then is that really getting at the problem? We don't get to the real issue until down to about that 4th why and the 5th why, and we really figure out her fear. So then this is the client's real problem. So that's just an illustration of the why, maybe something that one of our clients or colleagues might say to us. Another example might sound like I have a goal, right? A goal might be something like, I want to start doing yoga because I want to improve my flexibility and mobility. I think yoga is going to help me. Why? Because I want to improve my balance. Well, what is it about that why do you want to improve your balance? Well, I'm afraid of falling and getting hurt. So why are you afraid? Well, there it is. I'm afraid because my mother fell when she was 70, broke her hip, and died in a nursing home. That's a big thing for your client to deal with, right? And you really don't get there until pretty deep down into questioning. And by the way, you'll see in this one, there are only 4 whys. And that's just to illustrate, it doesn't have to be 5. Sometimes it really is only 4. Sometimes it might be 6. But it's kind of in that, the message is really beyond the 1 or 2. So back to this again, what if we stopped at that 3rd why and we worked with a client on a plan for yoga classes each week, and we never got to this last real piece about the client? One more example. Again, something we might hear often. I love this one. Client says, I think I should, right? These sort of, I think I need to lose 10 pounds. So why do you need to lose 10 pounds? So I can get rid of excess body fat. Why do you need to get rid of excess fat? So I can fit in my bikini this summer. Like, that's a real thing right now, except for 10 maybe, right? And then why do you want to fit in your bikini? Well, I need to look good when I'm at the beach with my friends. So why do you need to fit into your bikini in order to go to the beach with your friends? Well, I need to look good at the beach in order to find a boyfriend. So what's the real message there? What if we stopped right at the front and we worked with a client on a plan to lose 10 pounds? We could do that. Client might lose 10 pounds. What if we stopped at number 3 and just had the client bring her bikini to every session, and once it fit, we were done? When really she wants a plan to find a boyfriend. And maybe there might be some other ways that this woman might think about, some other things she might think about doing in order to find a boyfriend, right? It might not just be at the beach if she lost 10 pounds. It's really digging deep. So Hopefully these have illustrated a couple of just, pretty close to real life examples in health and wellness that this might look like. So with that, let's try it. If you're all willing to try it. So what you need in order to do this, hopefully you have near you a scrap of paper, napkin, a hand, something to write on, something to write with, pen, pencil, crayon, eyeliner, no matter what you've got, something you can actually write with. And then we're gonna spend about 5 minutes just on a guided 5 whys journey. And I would just say that if we were in a different kind of format, in an in-person format, we can certainly do this in partners. If we were in this virtual format and had breakout sessions open, we could do this with one another in breakout sessions. You could invite people to do this together or individually. So there are some different options if you ever would want to kind of test this out yourself. So when you've got paper and pen or something to write on and with, hopefully my talking's given everybody a minute to do that. Just think about a goal or problem you have. Typically, as health and wellness folks, seems like there's always something we're all thinking about working on. It might sound like I want to, I need to, didn't get to something, or the problem is, so just jot that down. And then if you would just do a reaction, a hand raise when you've got yours down. All right, thank you, Karen. Hand raise or a thumbs up or any kind of sign. All right, thank you, Rachel. I can't quite see everybody all at the same time, but we're getting close. All right, got another hand up. Okay, so everybody's got something. I'm going to just walk through a couple with you myself too. So my goal that I'm thinking about right now is that I want to run a 5K in under 30 minutes in August at one of my next races in August. Now, why is that? I'm going to think about that. I'm going to give you all, with your goal, about 1 minute to think about what's your why for that goal. So just first thing that kind of comes to your mind, jot that down. And I'm going to watch my watch and give us about 1 minute. Okay, about a 10-second warning. Okay, that's one round of whys. If you're a person like me, you might number, but you don't have to. That's one round of whys. So for me, that might sound like, I said I wanted to run a 5K in under 30 minutes in August. So if you ask me why, that my answer might sound something like, well, I used to be able to do that really easily, and I want to be able to do it again. So my next question to myself would be, so why is it that I want to be able to do that again? So take a look at your last answer and ask yourself why. And then take 1 minute to jot down the next answer to that. We'll see what happens. And about a 10-second warning. Okay, I see lots of writing. You're all very introspective people, which is great. Okay, so you've gone through 2 rounds of why. We're on to the third one. So for me, just to show you one more example, I said last, I used to be able to do that easily, run that 5K in under 30 minutes. I want to be able to do it again. So my next why to myself might sound like, well, Cindy, why is it important for you to be able to do that again? Okay, so think about your last statement and what kind of a why statement you would have. Why is it important, or why do you want to do that? Why do you need to solve that problem? Whatever your statement is, kind of what's the next why? And we'll take a minute to go through that one. Okay, 5-second warning. Okay, you've been through 3 rounds now. Kind of go back for a second and just scan through where you've been. What was your first goal, your why, your second, your third? You've gone through 3 rounds. You're getting ready to go through 4. You've got 2 more to go. Now we're going to do the fourth one. So just to share my example again. So the last thing I told you was that I wanted to be able to do this 5K easily again. Asked myself why it was important. And my answer that I just came up with was because it's a sign for me that I'm healthy and strong if I can actually run that 5K in under 30 minutes. And then I might ask myself, so why is that a sign for you, Cindy? What about that is a sign? So now it's your turn. One more round, 2 more rounds for you, but this round, 1 minute. Okay, 10-second warning. I'm still seeing a little writing. Okay, so that was round 4. Now, as I shared with you, 5 isn't a magic number. It's a pretty good number. And there was some actual research around evidence-based research to show us that that's a pretty decent number. But I'd invite you now just to take a look at where you are and then think about, do you need another why? Do you want to need another why? And if so, I'm going to give you about another minute and just invite you to add another round of that if you would like to do so. And then we're going to do some thinking and talking. So I'll give you 1 more minute just to do that or contemplate. Okay, you've got about another 10 seconds just to wrap up your thoughts if you're still writing. Okay, so that was a quick little kind of quick and dirty explanation of the 5 whys, some history, some examples, and then actually trying it out on your own with something you're thinking about. So now let's do a little discussion. So what did you learn about your own 5 whys? Does anybody want to jump in and just share something you learned as you went through that process? It can be a specific example or just a general statement or thought. Feel free to take yourself off mute and jump in. We're a small group here, so if anybody wants to chime in.
So I feel like I could have kept going, kept drilling down. Maybe 6, 7, 8. Why do we stop at 5 or 6?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great observation and a great question. And I think you have to go either if you're doing this individually for yourself, or if you're actually using this process with a client or even with a business problem, you kind of have to keep going until you feel like you've found that root cause and that thing that tells you, okay, here's the problem I really want to work on, right? Or here's what I need to address first before I can go any further. So 5 isn't a magic number, but you should feel like you know when you get there.
Okay.
Anybody want to share something else you learned or what your goal was and that what your first goal is and what you got to at the end?
I can share a different opinion. Actually, my major is international health management, so I'm familiar with this tool and I'm aware how it can really help us identify root causes. So I didn't use it in my personal life, but in a practical or academic purpose, I know its impact. So thank you for just refreshing this point.
Oh, sure. Absolutely.
Thank you.
That's a process that's been around for, my goodness, almost 100 years. It's interesting.
Yeah.
So I do feel like I with at 5 I got to an important baseline. I mean, I got deep enough that I feel like I have something to talk about. Talking about, I guess, if my client were to get there.
Right, something else to really start thinking about. Did any of you surprise yourself with something you hadn't thought about before?
I want to add something. So I wasn't surprised, and I think I like the process because it really gets into that why that we're consistently talking around and coaching. Um, in order to make it more coach-like, I will probably interject what questions and why questions, right? It's just sort of like just to make it more aligned with the coaching model. But I think for me, it was I've been wanting to start my herb garden again. My husband did. He put a huge potting green in the backyard, and we removed my vegetable and herb garden about 2 years ago this summer, and I haven't done it. And my final one was because I want to prevent risk of diabetes and the risk associated with diabetes that are in my family, and just sort of have an easy access to vegetables in my house. So it always brings me back to a core value. So almost like big questions and big tasks like that get me to a core value.
Thank you for sharing that, Karen.
Does he use his potting green?
Oh yes, every day.
Oh, okay.
Well, almost every day he does. He uses it. Yeah.
Oh, then probably don't take it away, or he'll be unhappy.
No. I mean, he paid
And
too
you'll
much
be
money
unhappy.
for it. And during COVID, it was great because he was working from home. So every afternoon he was potting out there.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, Karen, thank you for sharing that. And I think you bring up a great point, and then one thing I want to just kind of put out there. Great point that yes, in coaching we need to adapt, and I know we've talked about a lot about those why and what questions. So you want to adapt this and not just kind of be static about the why. If you do think about this process, I think the real power of it is kind of that idea to keep digging deeper, and you will find something that you won't necessarily find if you stopped up front, which leads me to my sort of wondering if Karen had just said to me in general, hey, I want to start my herb garden again, I would not have immediately known or thought about Karen's connecting that with prevention of diabetes and her health and how she's eating. It would have definitely probably taken me a few questions to get there. Karen, just to ask you out of curiosity, if I had asked you, 3 days ago, why do you want to start an herb garden? Do you think you would have given me that answer like first as your first answer?
No, not for sure. I mean, so I can go over the process. The second why was because I want to have easy access to vegetables. The next one, it was because easy access to vegetable encouraging me to eat healthier and create new recipes. The next why was because I'm passionate about nutrition, and it was kind of the path that led me to this development of my profession. And my final why is, why did I get into this? And it was all because of diabetes. So yeah, no, I would not have gotten into that with the first why. But what I wanted to say is that it's truly a value that I hold very dearly, right? That guides a lot of the other decisions that I make in life.
Right. And that's where I think you can get down to this essence of like what is most important to a client, or what do they most value? What do they most fear? What is that biggest fear that we need to, overcome or address? And thank you, Karen, for going through your process. That was great to hear that. And I'm sure we all heard little pieces in there that we thought, okay, here are some things that would then eventually lead us to perhaps some things around goal setting and dreaming with Karen if she were actually our client and this was something that we were working through with her. So just got a few more minutes. So just one thing, I want to do a rapid fire, two more things. I want to do a rapid fire wrap up to just share one word that describes how you are feeling at the end of this little mini kind of practitioner personal workshop. We're just going to go around. I'm going to call on you, throw out one word, no right or wrong answers here. Everybody think for a second, get your word. Okay, Rachel.
I'd probably have to go with insightful, I think is the word that would most describe this case scenario, because from the very beginning to the final why, I got to a point where it's like a personal issue that I've been dealing with for a while, where it's like, so my statement that I started off was, I want to incorporate more fruits and vegetables into my diet. And then my final why went to, so that I can have a great outlook on my future that I don't have to worry about. And I find that I worry about like every single little thing in my life. Like I overthink a lot. So I think like if I were to do this later on too, I would find that my last why I would probably have to deal with something that I personally need to work on. So that was something that I found really interesting.
Ooh, thank you. I'd love to know what's in between. So insightful. All right, Red, what's your word?
It's adamant. It's when you make your first why, you're being more adamant and getting down to the final why. And like Tim says, you may even go even deeper because you're not being truthful. Maybe in the beginning, you're being superficial. So by being adamant, you're deepening that process. And then the other thing that when you had asked about in the session, what are we wondering about, what are we learning, it's almost like we're taking a personal trip of doing our own opening and questioning of ourselves as coaches, or a person who isn't one, but they're doing their own process within. Even though Karen mentioned that why, we wouldn't use necessarily why because it can sound like an attack. We would use more like open-ended, what, how, when, where. So, but for us personally, why gets really deep. And then as a coach, of course, when we use the coaching direction, it's helping us help our client ask their whys internally.
Yeah, great points. Thank you. I love your word adamant. Okay, Crystal, what's your word?
Anxious.
Anxious. Oh, okay.
That's a good one.
All right. Well, hey, I asked you how you're feeling, and there's no right or wrong answer. So anxious. I hope we're able to address that one, right? I don't want anybody to feel anxious after my session.
No, it's just what like my questions had led to. I was already something that I had like was already previously thinking about, and so I'm just kind of like reassessing everything and where I'm at right now and everything. So I've already been previously anxious, and so like every time I think about it, I get a little bit more anxious, and I'm like, so I try not to think about it, but I need to think about it because I need to get it done.
Ooh, okay. Wait for my last question. All right. Okay, Tim, what's your word?
Determined.
Determined. Okay. Love it.
Yeah, for me, there's no slowing down. It's all going forward, and I'm determined to get there.
Awesome. All right. Thank you. And Fabiola.
The word came up, it's focus.
Focus.
So one of the things that I noticed, I struggle a lot, personally speaking, in my own decisions. It comes down to overthinking. So I tend to ask myself 100 whys, and I tend to just deviate from what I started. So actually for me will be knowing that I need to stop at a 5 or a 3 or a 7, but knowing that I cannot just keep on deviating from finding my truth why. So that's the reason why I picked focus. I want to make sure that I don't I don't try to lie to myself so I don't get to the bottom of it. So yes, I have to stay focused. And it just reminded me at work, my boss, most of the time, he'll be like, but why did this happen? And he'll go over like 3 whys. And I started doing that at work. So like I try to get to the bottom of the root cause, like you mentioned, but I never apply this in my personal life. So I do see this a way for me to stay focused and truth to my true why.
Thank you. I like that, finding your truth. And on my participant list, I have Rehab McAway.
Yes.
Thank you. What's your word?
Actually, it's difficult to choose one, but it's like maybe refreshing my memory because I'm so familiar with this approach. And it reminded me, I studied it in my first class. So it's like bringing a lot of back memories, academically, of course. So I enjoyed it a lot.
Oh, excellent. Okay, great. Thank you. And Karen, what's your word?
It's value. Values.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you. Okay. Did I miss anyone? I don't think so, but it's hard to tell sometimes. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing. We're going to do one more last thing.
You missed yourself.
Oh, I missed myself. Well, my word is truly thankful. And it's just thankful for all of you that I got to kind of experiment and play around and do a little teaching and a little coaching myself this afternoon. So I'm just truly thankful. But thank you for asking. So last thing, and that is think about that goal you put at the top or the problem and what you got to at the bottom. Now, we have to do a motivational ruler, right? Or I wouldn't feel good if I didn't do that with Karen in the room. So in the chat, on a scale of 1 to 10, how motivated are you to actually think about this a little more and think about addressing what you sort of got to at the end? Again, no right or wrong answer, just a question. 10 being, I am so motivated, I'm gonna go out and think about this now and do something about it. And 1, you know, it just wasn't, I picked it, but it wasn't all that important to me. So just throw it in the chat. And then we can all see that and throw it up. Tim,
Right.
10 fingers. Awesome. Awesome. I'm at a 7 right now because I'm having some kind of crazy hip issue. So that's been affecting my running. So I'm motivated, but held back. So I don't know. All right, we've got lots of 7s, 8s, 10s. I'm so impressed with all of you. You're awesome. I'm the lowest one of the bunch. All right, there's another 7 with me. All right. Okay, great. Excellent, Rachel. Well, once
So
again.
is that how you as a coach know you've gone far enough with it wise, when the client can say, well, this is a 10 for me.
Oh, that's an interesting question.
If they're at a 5, do we keep digging?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I'm not sure, Tim. I think that might depend on the actual client situation. We might have to have our pros speak to this one too, but I'm just thinking that in some cases, the client may be at that like central thing, that value, it may be a 10, but you may still get to that central value, but the client may still not have the motivation to actually make a change based on something else that's, you know, that's in the way of that, or that's the level of importance. They might not have the motivation, it might not rise to the level of importance at that time. So I don't know, Karen, what do you think about that?
I think you addressed that correctly. It depends on the question. Because the question that you asked around motivation was thinking more about this. It wasn't necessarily doing something. So if we're just thinking about it, it's just the thought, sort of formalizing, digging deeper, understanding values. And that's an action item in and of itself, the thought process. So in coaching, you probably will formalize the thought process in an actionable item in a way that the thought process becomes an action. But it doesn't mean that you're going to do an action yet around the thought. The thought becomes the goal. It's just sort of formalizing, how am I going to cement this in a way that it propels me to do more of what I want to do. So it all depends on the question.
Great, thank you. Well, we are right at time and I don't want to run your meeting over. I probably took a little longer than I was allotted. So again, thank you very much. I really enjoyed this. Glad to meet all of you. And when Karen shared about the organization, I would have loved to have joined you, but I work 8 to 5-ish during the day. So just didn't work out for me, but it's been great to meet all of you and see a couple of people that I hadn't seen for a whole month. So thank you.
Cindy was wonderful. Thank you.
This was great. Thank you. Thanks, Cindy. Cynthia, it made me think about other processes for quality assurance, right? Kaizen being one, and all of these other elements that could fit very nicely in coaching and sort of digging deeper and understanding the why. Thank you.